welcome all to this talk about product discovery and integrating citizen science into EVE Online. Just to kind of, start you off, please, you know the drill. Turn off your phones and fill out the survey and all the nice things. My name is Bergur Finnbogason. People call me Bergur, like hamburgers. It's much easier. I'm a senior development manager at CCP Games in Reykjavik.
And I'm Attila Szantner. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Massively Multiplayer Online Science. And exactly a year ago during GDC, we launched a new project codenamed Project Discovery, which later became one of the biggest citizen science efforts in 2016. This is even more remarkable if you consider the fact that none of the parties involved had a track record in citizen science. So how did we manage to make this work? Well, as a teaser, I can tell you that video games and gamers played a substantial role in the success. But to tell you the whole story, I have to start with citizen science. Citizen science is the crowdsourcing of scientific data analysis or data acquisition. But I believe it's much more than that. It has a very strong educational aspect. And also, it's an invaluable tool in scientific outreach. It's paramount that we understand what scientists are working on, even if it may be on a superficial level. And what would be a better tool for that than to actually work on the data that scientists work with? So citizen science, I believe, is very important. Now, you may have heard the term citizen science, and I'm pretty sure you met some of these projects in citizen science, like the folded protein folding game, where we try to find native structures of proteins, or Zooniverse/Galaxy Zoo, where we classify galaxies captured on the Hubble deep space images. Actually, this project became so successful, so popular, that a whole platform grew out of it, and now they're hosting like more than 50 different projects. Another good example is the Philo, which is a project from Canada, from the McGill University. And here researchers are trying to solve DNA sequence alignment problems. And finally, a final example, iWire, where we help to map the visual neurons in the human brain. All of these projects do an amazing job in citizen science, but they have a major problem to tackle, and that is user engagement and retention. So that's where our story started. 2 years ago, with a friend of mine, Bernard Revas, we had an idea that instead of creating standalone citizen science games or citizen science gamified experiences, why don't we take these problems and integrate them with the most engaging form of entertainment of today, which is unquestionably video games. Integrate them with major already existing AAA titles and integrate them as a seamless gaming experience. And our hypothesis was that if we manage to make this, manage to create this experience, manage to match the visuals, connect the dots with the lore, with the reward system, with the game mechanics, and ask the pros of the game industry to create an engaging experience, then we might be able to transform a tiny percentage of all the time that we spend with gaming to do something good in real life. And that tiny percentage would be a virtually limitless human computation engine to serve science. So that was our initial concept. And first we contacted researchers. We tried to validate the idea. And we got very enthusiastic responses. And we met with Emma Landberg. She is heading a research group in Sweden at the Human Protein Atlas. They're building a big open database of microscope images. And we immediately knew that this kind of material would be a perfect raw material for a first project. She had 250,000 images, beautiful ones. The task of the gamer was to find or localize the green markings on the image that mark the location of a certain protein. So this was one part of the job. This was actually the easier part of the job. We had a lot of friends in research. But the harder part was to get in touch with the gaming industry, with you guys, And when we had this idea, I immediately knew that EVE Online would be a perfect match for the project. So we started to work on that. And after a couple of months, I got an email from Andy Norgren. She's the executive producer of EVE Online, that this sounds intriguing, let's have a Skype. So she immediately became a huge supporter of the project, and around 2015 November, we already flew to Reykjavik, and we're presenting this concept to the stakeholders at CCP.
So, integrating citizen science into a AAA established computer game is no easy task. Like Attila was saying, the EVE dev team was super curious about this idea and about this project. And for those of you that don't know EVE Online is a single-shot, massively multiplayer online game where hundreds of thousands of players fight over power, wealth, and fame. In EVE, players decide their own fate and write their own stories. But, you know, product discovery in EVE Online, why? Well, first, because of science. We're all huge science buffs at CCP, and, you know, for myself, my kind of first interaction with crowdsourced science was this beautiful thing called SETI at Home. I think this was like back in 1999 or something, and me and my best friend used to sit and watch this for hours, looking for aliens in faraway galaxies. We're actually on dial-up modem, so his mom was not happy when she got the phone bill, but hey, science. But the thing, you know, there was no interaction with this. This was just something you watched, and it just kind of chugged along. So we kind of, you know, while we were looking at this, we were kind of, you know, we were talking about it, and we were kind of role-playing this whole thing, and, you know, of course, playing at that time a lot of XCOM Apocalypse, I think it was, you know, because we had to prepare for the invasion. So it had kind of been, you know, stuck in my mind for quite some time, long before I started the gaming industry. It's like, how can you actually merge these two together? So when Attila called, I was super stoked. This is a really interesting game design challenge, and you know, we really look at this as an opportunity to take part in something much bigger, and, you know, who isn't up for a great challenge? And we also believe that, you know, we also hope that our example sets the stage for many other successful collaborations between science and gaming to come. So, yeah. But there were a lot of unknowns when we kind of dove into this, and we really enjoy unknowns at CCP. And it was everything from technical unknowns to legal issues, very, very, very interesting legal issues. And also how in the world we were going to design and build this thing. But we kind of set 4 main design principles to kind of guide us on this journey. The first one was we wanted designs to be of real-world purpose and altruistic nature. So, you know, drone strike analysis, bad. Cancer research or mapping human proteins, good. It had to be aesthetically fitting and thematically adaptable to fit the EVE universe. So, you know, we didn't want research data with images of giraffes or rhinos, or, you know, we didn't really want any street signs from planet Earth, since, you know, New Eden is very far from planet Earth. The task had to take consistent length of time to solve. We didn't want to create a moment where, you know, some things are like 2 seconds and then you get like a 15-minute data set you had to solve. And the research needed high volume of tasks. So yeah, 500,000 tasks was kind of, no, 250,000 tasks was kind of, you know, that fitted the first research data quite well. So as you have seen, the data from Human Protein Atlas is really beautiful, and actually to a point where our art director thought we had tinkered with the data before showing it to him. Thematically in-game, the in-game science faction Sisters of Eve are actually researching tissue samples they've gotten from the mysterious drift arrays in the game. They're trying to kind of make sense of these drifters. The Sisters of Eve research group is led by Professor Lundberg and calls upon capsuleers of New Eden to take part in solving this scientific challenge through the project discovery interface. And this is really great because you have Professor Lundberg in game and then Professor Lundberg in reality, so you're kind of playing with merging realities here. On time to complete, we knew that this was not the easiest task to understand, mapping these proteins. So we spent a lot of time balancing and tweaking and working, testing the game out on our test servers, and getting a lot of great feedback from our players. And yeah, there was a lot of tweaks in the first month of testing. And as I said before, the subcellular protein atlas had around 250,000 samples, so we thought it was a great kind of start project for product discovery. Our preliminary calculation gave us around 2 to 3 months to reach full consensus on the data. We were proven wrong, but I won't spill the beans for Attila. He will have something fun for him to talk about. So actually, how did we build this thing? We partnered up with Reykjavík University, the computer science department at Reykjavík University, to work with us on this. And we thought it was a great opportunity to kind of strengthen our ties with universities in Iceland, and kind of it kind of goes a full circle then. So this is the first version of Eve Sits in Science. This was a web browser version we showed at FanFest. I think it was 2015 when we showed this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, we showed the first version at Eve FanFest 2015. Got a lot of great feedback there. Then took it to Eve Vegas and launched it on CC, which is our test server. And then launched it exactly a year ago. So kind of the core idea of product discovery is that CCP provides the framework, and then MMOS provides the content. It's kind of the link between us and the scientists or the science partners provide the content for this frame. This makes the whole kind of dependency chain really interesting, because due to legal issues, we are not allowed to host a lot of the data that's being shown here. So there's a really interesting challenge of kind of giving away, or kind of having to depend on a third party for your content, which is always a super scary thing when you're a game developer, because yeah, if anyone has tried it, there's time to penis is very short. So how does it actually work in game? While you play EVE Online, you can launch the product discovery window and play. And this is because of the time to complete is relatively short. It's a great thing you can do while kind of doing things that take longer time, such as mining, or when you're traveling between places, or just hanging around in station chatting to people. So it's kind of a good side project to work on. So when you open the interface, you get an image of a cell sample, and your task is to identify where the green marked proteins, where the green proteins sit. For example, here it's in the nucleus, I think. Yeah, nucleus probably. Oh, now someone will call me out. So yeah, you pick the categories on your right, and once you kind of feel confident, you submit your answer, and the answer is analyzed against all the other analysis submitted for that sample. That then gives you feedback on your submission. So in this case here, we picked the correct answer. You can have multiple answers, which makes this like exponentially more difficult. But to actually calculate accuracy and to reward you, there are around 15% of all tasks in product discovery are what we call pre-solved or gold standard tasks that we use to judge your accuracy and reward you accordingly. When you reach a new level, so you basically level up slowly. You gain experience point and level up slowly, and when you reach a new level, you get something called analysis credits, which then you can spend to buy some awesome rewards that you can't get anywhere else, but while you play this thing. So actually on the gold standard, what's quite interesting is because we can't host any of the images, the gold standard tasks are balanced by the scientists. So that creates a lot of really interesting back and forth between us as game developers and the scientists, and kind of talking about game best practices. And I think the HPA guys are, they're becoming like super game developers slowly. So once a sample reaches a significant level of agreement, we can say with some certainty that it has reached a consensus. So the sample actually lives in a database until that consensus has been reached, and this can mean anything between 15 to 50 submissions of each sample. So the data set, even if the data set is 250,000 images, it's actually 250,000 times 15 till 50. So it's a relatively big task.
And I thought to get our hands a bit more dirty with technical details. We created a platform that on one side standardizing the data and the problem types that comes from research, and the other side it provides an API for game developers, which is important because you can focus on creating the user interface and an engaging experience for your players, and you don't have to be swamped by the details of the citizen science process itself. That is very important that this part of the architecture is performant, so it can handle heavy load. And also from a business point of view, it's interesting that we're a neutral party, so I think that way it's easier for other game developers to hop on board and be part of this. Now, I really hope that at this point you already see how cool and important and fun this project is, but I really want to show how easy it is to integrate. So this is, basically there are two things that you have to do. This is roughly the code that you have to call to get a task. From our servers, we provide you with all the information that you need to visualize this task. And then when the player is ready, you submit the task. Again, relatively simple. And our API provides you with all the information that is needed to show the results screen. We give you an accuracy score that you can use to hand out rewards for the players. So it's as simple as that. Other than that, you can really focus on building an engaging experience and connecting the dots with the lore and all the in-game mechanics. So the results. After all this preparation, you can believe that we couldn't wait to see how players reacted and what's coming out of this. And it was way beyond our wildest imaginations. This is the numbers from the first day. We had around 500,000 classifications and almost 15,000 images reached consensus. This was along with about 3 or 4 hours of downtime. I was here at GDC. I couldn't come to GDC. I was in the hotel room with not the best internet, trying to keep the whole thing alive. So it's quite interesting. And another nice metric is the Sisters of Eve combat suit, which is the kind of the ultimate reward in Project Discovery. And we thought that it would take at least a couple of days to hand out one of those. We had to hand out 45 in the first day, which was pretty unbelievable. I don't remember, you had the number of how many hours we estimated?
It was 16 hours and, what was it, 16 hours and 17 minutes to hand out the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one was like 2 minutes later. So that guy, like, if he wouldn't had, you know, had a toast, but rather just like dry bread, he would have won. So
yeah.
Tough luck.
Yeah, we could call it a draw, I think.
Yeah, we could call it a draw.
So it was pretty amazing. We thought that we had 250,000 images to analyze as the first batch. We had an estimation of 2 or 3 months. Again, we were very wrong with this. Players have gone over the whole first batch in 3 weeks' time. And since then, actually, we put the same data set for the 6th time in the system for players to analyze, which is really interesting from the citizen science point of view to see how the different consensus, what is the relation between time and the different consensus that players are creating and so on. So it's in itself, it's a really interesting research in citizen science. And as of today, we have more than 25 million classifications in the system, which is pretty amazing. From the scientific side, where researchers are still working on to analyze the data, there is one thing that Emma already published, is this. This is a very special protein structure called rods and rings for obvious reasons. And players have identified around 100 new protein candidates that play a part in this structure. So it's already really nice. From a game designer point of view, I think it's even more interesting how the community reacted. And we can say that the community embraced the project. They were very active. They created a lot of content, wiki pages, tutorial videos. These are some quotes from e-forums, which show how strong the educational aspect of the project was and how a great experience CCP created around the problem set. One of our favorite things is this poetry competition, which was about project discovery, and I love this almost classic, tubuli are red, nucleus is blue, but it's only the green that matters to you, which actually describes perfectly what you have to do in the project. From the researcher side, as Bergur mentioned, we created an avatar for Emma. But it's not just that, but they were really active in the whole process. So they were communicating with the players, they were active on the forums, they were coming to FanFest. For example, they were giving a streaming lecture about proteomics in Eve University, using the same material that they used in Stockholm for university students to teach proteomics, which was a really nice crossover. Also, one of my favorite stories about how committed they were is that 2 years ago when we, at Eve Vegas, where we showcased the first prototype, Emma actually canceled her appearance at the proteomics conference where she was supposed to speak about her research and opted to come to Vegas and talk to players about this. And then we had a live citizen science tournament in Reykjavik last week. It was a lot of fun. And actually Hilmar mentioned it in his closing speech as this being the next esports, which was, of course, a huge exaggeration, but it was really nice to hear. And then we had a lot of articles about the project, both in high-profile scientific journals. Actually, the journalist who wrote this article told me that this is the first time that I published a screenshot from video game, which is nice, I think, and also in mainstream media. And of course, this was very good for CCP. This was very good for us, for Human Protein Atlas, for the project. But I think having that much attention from the general public, from non-gamers, having such positive messages in the media is very important for the whole gaming industry. Now, a couple of words about the future. So we are, of course, trying to work with more and more game developers. One project that I can talk of is Gearbox. 2 years ago, I met with Randy Pitchford here at GDC, and he became a very big fan and supporter of this whole project. And I don't know if you've seen this presentation. He showed some images and videos about new artistic styles and techniques that they're experimenting with. And we just can't wait to see how citizen science can be integrated with their titles. Another thing is this. We realize that from a higher perspective, what we're doing, we are trying to find already existing, established, active online communities and try to kind of tweak their activities a bit or smuggle a little bit of science in their everyday life. And so we thought that why don't we approach MOOCs, which are these big open online courses with tens of thousands of very enthusiastic and motivated students, and why don't we bring real live scientific data for them to analyze. So in that effort, we're working together with the Geneva University, and we try to bring exoplanet research data into their course on the subject. And they're a very prestigious institute on that, because Michel Mayor, who is a professor of the university, is actually the researcher who found the very first exoplanet. So that's very interesting. And of course, a very important part of our future plans is to have new projects together with CCP.
So with the Human Protein Atlas project, kind of, it has kind of run its course. So we have decided to like sunset it and start focusing on other research. And it's actually quite great because now we've built this framework, and it's now a matter of trying to find new ways to visualize new types of data, and adding an interesting creative layer. So kind of the 4 principles that I talked about earlier, what we actually learned, since we wrote those is that, looking for a new project, kind of the most important thing that we found is that we don't want to devalue the project as it is today. We have set a certain expectation standard in product discovery, and it's not only the altruistic nature and the seamless connection that kind of pulls in the community, but it's also the complexity and the depth of the research. Kind of a caveat here, the EVE community is very open and willing to take on like very difficult challenges, and they kind of, I don't know if you've played EVE, but EVE is kind of a hardcore game. That's, it's kind of maybe a light, But of course there are plenty of simpler research projects out there, so you don't need to worry that you need to teach your players to fold proteins or something. So after going through a few different data sets and narrowing down, we managed to narrow down to something that felt really close to home, and we're actually going to work with University of Geneva to search for exoplanets. We were going to announce it at GDC, but then NASA announced TRAPPIST-1 last week, and we were like, hey, that's kind of the same thing as we're doing. And they're also working with University of Geneva, so let's join up. So for those of you that don't know, exoplanets are planets orbiting suns outside our solar systems. All the stars that you see on the sky are, in simple terms, suns. The data set is extremely big. I mean, it's almost as big as the stars you see in the sky. But at the same time, there are some limiting factors and issues. For instance, the gold standard set is limited to the amount of exoplanets that we know about, and even that kind of takes the gold standard set down to a few thousands. And even like if you want to get data sets or gold standards data in the resolution that we're looking for, it actually limits it even further down. So Professor Lundberg will actually pass the torch over to Michel Mayor, who is going to be the ambassador for this new project. So he will get an avatar in game, which is pretty cool. almost as cool as him getting a Wolf Prize this year in physics, which is also really cool. But yeah, like Attila was saying, Michel found the first exoplanet back in 1995, so we're really excited of getting him on board, and he will actually be coming to FanFest this year, giving a super scientific talk about exoplanets. So the data that we're receiving in this phase of product discovery is a kind of these light curves, and this is basically, in simple terms, this is almost like a time lapse of a star. So you have a telescope, and it takes snapshots of the star over a period of time, and when you kind of plot these up, you get these beautiful light curves. And what the players are looking for are actually dips in this light curve, and that's basically when something goes in front of the star and blocking the light from it. In science terms, this is called a transit. So players will be looking at transits. And here you see a better representation of transits. These are like multiple transits, and of course you know this thing, by now. This is the TRAPPIST-1 light curve, and yeah, these are the 7 exoplanets that were announced last week by University of Leeds in collaboration with NASA and all sorts of cool scientific universities and stuff. Yeah. But what's actually nice is that University of Geneva holds the prestigious last position in the Nature article that announced the find. So we're super happy that we're working with them. So why can't we use algorithm to find these exoplanets? Well, we somewhat can use algorithms to find these exoplanets. There is a box-fitting algorithm used to search for periodic transits in the light curves. This method is called BLS, or box-fitting least squares. I hope that's correct. It's more or less like a periodogram looking for periodic events in the light curve and computing the power as a function of the frequency. And then the algorithm folds the light curve to find to the highest identified peak in the BLS. But there are some issues with it. It's great when you have like a single planet. This works great when you have a single planet, but this starts to break really badly when you have multi-planet systems like TRAPPIST-1, and when you have circumbinary planets that you see here, basically systems with 2 suns, monotransit events, and transits that are masqueraded by strong stellar activity. So if you have a lot of activities around. So humans are actually outperforming the algorithm. So there is still some hope for humans, which is great. And there are also a lot of interesting challenges here that we're working through with the students from Reykjavik University. There are both really interesting technical issues with, how in the world do you rent a ridiculous amount of data points in a graph in one line? How do you fold these light graphs, and how do you actually mark them? And then how do you mark multiple transits? But there's also a lot of really interesting game design questions. And I mean, since we only want to host one project at a time, one really interesting challenge is how do you sunset the Human Protein Atlas project, and how do you do it gracefully, and how do you kind of store the data and store the prestige that people have managed to create for themselves. Another interesting challenge is that exoplanets are really, 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 really rare. So how do you make an engaging experience searching for a needle in a haystack? So that's definitely a fun problem to solve. And then we also want to create opportunities for mastery, and that's super important. So kind of a couple of takeaways from this lecture. This was actually a super fun project to work on. Even if it's considered a serious game, it's still entertaining, and it is entertainment. And I mean, I think the game is fun, but what's actually also really great is that we managed to, connect people that usually don't talk. I've probably never Googled as many words from emails in my life. I've learned a lot of words that I can never use, but it's, my Google searches are very interesting now. I mean, we were kind of one of the reasons why this project, I think, worked really well with us is that we have a really engaged community, and they really engaged with this project. And they actually made their own subreddit about product discovery that kind of blew up. That was amazing, and there was a lot of people like non-scientists or non-EVE players that participate in this community. So that's really, really great. Like I said before, I mean, this was a huge leap of faith. Trusting a third party to provide content for your game is a very, very, very scary thought, and it's something we talked a lot about in CCP. If it's like, this was like one of the big blockers for the project in the beginning, is like, how can you make sure that we can trust this person? And but it was an unnecessary scare. I mean, the project has, it's been up. It's very little downtime, and it's really good content. And we managed to kind of immerse the content fairly seamlessly with the game and the whole game experience. And kind of apart from this being fun, we found that there are two main reasons why that kind of drove people back to product discovery. The first one was that there was like a big group of people that looked at product discovery as almost as mining. So there was exclusive rewards that you couldn't get anywhere else, and you could sell them for a good profit. And then there was also a very big group of players that are just doing it for the science, and are doing it for the greater good. And it's actually amazing the amount of people that have ridiculous amount of analysis credits and are not spending it because the reward is doing science. And so that's really great. And also Human Protein Atlas did a fantastic job embracing the community. Everything from like communicating with people on Twitter quite actively to opening up their vaults and allowing people into the wikis and giving university lectures in the in-game university, EVE University. So we definitely want to, this is one of the things that kind of drove us and Attila to investigate MOOCs and like allow players to dive as deeply as they want into the subject at hand. Like I said, and also like what I said before, that what MMOS is providing is not limited to cell images or exoplanets. It's really easy to kind of imagine how this could fit into other games. I mean, here is something that's super straightforward. I mean, these are not actual projects. This is just like sketches, like bad Photoshop, producer Photoshop, like I call it. I mean, here you can see like, a zoo universe kind of analyzing images, animal images from webcams, or like automated images, or, even cooler, like if you could, use your pip in Fallout 4 to cure cancer. I don't know, that would be awesome. Anyone from Bethesda? Bling, bling. But all in all, I mean, now we have the infrastructure in place, and we can really start to kind of weave the core storyline of the game with product discovery, giving us more tools to deepen the experience and blur the lines between the reality of EVE Online and the reality that we live in. And by doing this, we hope to set an example. We hope that our example sets the stage for many more successful collaborations between science and gaming to come. So yeah, citizen science begins with you. Any questions?
I have a question, actually, yeah.
Yep, there's a mic in the center.
Sure. It's been a little while since I played EVE, but you guys do have a lot of sort of, for the Bartles type players that don't want to do combat but want to do exploration and research, there's a lot of options for that in the game. There's like the probe ships that you can get that are sort of more specialized towards exploration. How much did Project Discovery bleed into that sort of exploration play type? Like, were there ships that were better at pulling in data, that were like research ships or anything like that?
So we wanted the project to be we wanted it to be something for everyone, and we wanted the barrier of entry to be as low as we could, because analyzing proteins is actually a fairly difficult task. So we didn't, for this initial project, we did not kind of tie it into any of the core systems. But this actually, this served as great PvE,
right. Yeah, exactly.
and it's actually great exploration content in an odd way.
It's a really cool project. I just want to congratulate you guys on the success so far. I think I heard you said something, you had like 250,000 protein samples. I was just wondering if you could elaborate where those came from and how they were collected.
They were coming from the Human Protein Atlas, and I think it's a 10-15 year research project, and they are building an open database of microscopic images. Okay. So it was them who acquired these images. They have a state-of-the-art technology. They're acquiring, like, I don't know how many images per week, but it's growing continuously.
Cool.
Hi. I think it's super cool that your players actually were the ones that created that subreddit, and I'm super hoping that that the scientists on the team did an AMA that we all can read. But my question is, how did you initially communicate the real world quality of this project or minigame to your players? Like, they clearly know what's going on and why it's important, and how did you tell them?
That's a good question. We had no idea how to communicate it. Like, we're really good at communicating, like, kind of in-game, in-lore type of communication, but like kind of this tie-in between, real science and kind of in-game content. There was a lot of debate, like, hey, how much should we, downplay or upplay the real science part? Because in a way, you don't want to break the immersion of, you're playing EVE, and when you're playing Project Discovery in EVE, you're actually doing science for the science faction. So it was a very delicate balance, but then it just spun out, and people kind of started writing whatever they wanted.
You guys have such a good community that I figured you did something on the forums or something like that first. You didn't do that?
No, we did we had like a web page, and forums and video blogs and on our own kind of in-game news network, and so multiple channels. Awesome.
Hey guys, amazing talk and project, and I was wondering if you can shed some light about how will you turn the exoplanet stuff into a gameplay experience?
So we are kind of in the initial steps in making it, but there is a really so you're basically looking for these transits, and when you're looking for these transits, they should happen in a certain rhythm. Mm-hmm. So you're both looking for the dips, and then you're also looking for the rhythms of those dips. So there is some really cool tools that you have to use, where you're kind of overlapping the light curves on top of itself, okay, and then aligning, kind of using the power of the dip. You try to align the transits. There's actually a second state that we're kind of like the curves kind of, they usually have somewhat of a sine wave. Mm-hmm. So, you need to also normalize that. So there is multiple kind of tools that you use. But it's one of the things that we are debating a lot right now, and what extra things we will add into it. But yeah, you are looking for a needle in a haystack, so there is a lot of data that has nothing in it. So there is an interesting mastery element there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, during when you pick the game, you mentioned that you want a consistent play time.
Yep.
So it doesn't sometimes finish too fast or too slow. Is that because of the gameplay or more for rewarding? Because for City at Home, you mentioned, right? They had no problem dealing with different kind of CPUs because we can always weigh all the outcomes, then reward fairly. And even if the rewards are not different, I mean, people are apparently buying crates trying to open them in CSGO. So I suppose even random chance of different rewards may not be a problem. So is that more from gameplay's perspective to make it more interesting, or?
Yeah, it was definitely from a gameplay perspective, and kind of from a, we want to, when you open up this thing, we kind of want you to have the feeling that you know what you're getting yourself into. Like we don't want to create a feeling of you like not knowing if, you will do like 2 and that will be like 5 minutes, or if you will do 2 and you will do like, 30 minutes. So we just, the consistent time was more to, just kind of create familiarity and not scare people away.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there, my name's Brandon. I'm a grad student at the University of Utah. I make games that heal people, so hearing this talk from you two is really inspiring. What you're doing is making a huge impact. Really, really exciting to see. So one of the things that kind of stood out to me as really important for making this work is the partnership between the university and CCP. So I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a bit more on that, like what value did the university see in collaborating with CCP and vice versa too? I'd love if you guys could elaborate on that a bit.
Oh, sorry, what was the last thing?
Just elaborating on the partnership between the two and what value you each saw in each other.
Yeah, I mean it's working with universities. I mean the good thing about working with universities is you get just a much more of an academic approach to the issue rather than us game developers, and we've been groomed in thinking in productions and production cycles and like, oh, this won't work, but so kind of research can is sometimes organized to the bottom when you're in production, sadly. So we've learned a lot from working with the university and just kind of their approaches to the issue and how they kind of deal with and dissect the issues at hand. Kind of a bonus from that is that we've actually found awesome developers through these projects that are now working with us, and so that's also just kind of helping. I mean, that's helping the tiny island of Iceland a lot, because we have. It's sometimes tricky to lure people to move to Iceland to work. Wonder why. So, no, it's been really good, and there's a very we have a very healthy relationship with universities in Iceland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if you cared to share, Attila, any about that relationship too.
Well, I think one thing which was really interesting, and probably Bergur should talk about that, we had a presentation with Andy, and one big obstacle in the very early stage of the project is how to justify it, both inside CCP and both for the gamer community. This is something that needs a bit of focus, so it means that other things will lose a bit of focus, and players always have things that they want to improve, and so she had to justify all this, and this was a very lucky setup that we can say that a lot of the work was done by external students or interns in the company, so we could communicate that there is not a huge loss of focus in CCP, so I think that was really interesting approach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk, first of all. And I just wanted to ask, like, I think it's great what you're doing because, well, the human brain is great at pattern recognition, even to the point where humans can recognize patterns where there are none. Did you take any steps to, like, avoid kind of fake data from people seeing patterns where there are none?
Yes, we did. So one of the issues with crowdsourcing and crowdsourcing science are like trends, and you know, if things go viral, and we had the thing go viral very early on in the project, where people like started to, I mean, they started to spam one of the protein categories called the cytoplasm, and we had to react really quickly. And luckily, it was you know, really early on, and we managed to kind of deal with it right away. So we kind of changed our reward structure a little bit. But this is always this is like one of the top things, you know, you have to worry about in any crowdsourcing thing. It's like if everyone decides to, you know, press A, then A must be the right answer. That's kind of the issue. It's one of the kind of the downsides of crowdsourcing. But I don't know. I think we're getting really good data, and it's actually the accuracy is relatively good when you compare it to gold standard and analysis done by scientists. So really cool.
Just to add a little bit more on that, in the beginning we used two ways to benchmark players' performance. One was gold standard, that was pretty straightforward, and the other way was when we reached consensus on a certain image, and we retroactively adjusted the scores of players. And that was a small point where players could actually exploit the system if they wanted to. Plus, cytoplasm is a location in the cell which appears more often, and it's kind of a judgment call in many cases whether you mark it as a class or it's there, but it's not really a signal. So putting all this together, we had this thing which we called later cytoplasm scam, and then we quickly really just removed that kind of thing in the system where we retroactively adjusted the scores, and we now just use gold standard, which is actually it's interesting because in many classical citizen science projects they actually use this approach to benchmark users' performance. But you know, games are a bit different.
Yeah, great. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hi, Attila, you might have just answered this question partially with that response. But with Project Discovery, you talked about your accuracy being measured against all the other submissions from crowdsourcing. You guys blew up pretty quickly within the first 24 hours, so maybe this wasn't at the end of the day a problem. But did you have any concerns or considerations within the first few hours or the first, few days on not having the database to base your samples against?
Actually, the first few days, the only consideration was to keep the system running. So we didn't have time to analyze the data quality. But I think already at that point we knew that it's going to be very successful from the perspective of activity. So it gives us more space to maneuver. So that's why we focused on first to find the glitches in the system and the bottlenecks, and then it took like 2 weeks, and then after that we could focus on the quality. But this cytoplasm scam was so obvious and so everywhere in the forums, as far as I remember, so that we corrected in the first week.
Okay. But I mean, this is also where the consensus of the consensus was quite interesting. So we could see after the first 3 weeks when we reached consensus. When we got the second consensus, we could basically look at the two data sets together and see, hey, how much offset was in the initial spike, and how much badness or goodness, was the initial spike. But they were relatively consistent, at least the first three consensuses.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in classical citizen science platforms, they try to optimize more or less the usage of citizen science resources. So they try to find, try to use algorithms so that you can reach the consensus with a relatively low number of votes. Yeah. Whereas here now we're improving our platform that we can kind of automatically put on the queue the same task that has been solved, because it's an interesting thing. Of course, we'll try to optimize the solution of one certain task, but then, you know, it's not possible to change like research project in a game from one day to the other, whereas on the classical platforms, you just close the project and you choose another. Here we have to keep it running. So here even if they solved it in 3 weeks, we have to keep it running for half a year. So that's also an interesting specialty of this approach.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.